And we actually have the President Emeritus, who the lecture series is named after, in the building. So folks, please give a warm welcome hand to Booker T. DeVaughn. We would also like to thank the TRCC Foundation Board. Without their generosity, this event would not have happened tonight. So a round of applause. And are there members in the audience from the foundation? Can you please stand up, please? Members from the foundation? No? Stand up, foundation. Stand up. No, I saw you. So our academic theme this year is myths and legends. And so the events on campus that we will be holding these 2 academic years will be surrounding around myths and legends and so forth. And we actually have the lab learning across the board. Are you the president, Steve?
Yes.
Stand up, Steve. Stand up. He's the president of LAB for Myths and Legends. Before I introduce our guests, I want to define myths and legends. Right? So myths, one of the definitions, is any invented story, idea, or concept, right? And we're going to explore some of the myths surrounding the war on drugs and so forth that occurred during the 90s, late 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s, and is still occurring today. 40 years ago, they declared the war on drugs, and we can actually assess how effective or ineffective they have been. And then legends, the body of stories of this kind, especially as they relate to a particular people, group, or clan. Okay? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the man you all come to see, watch the film and documentary on his life. I introduce to you Mr. Freeway Rick Ross.
Well, first of all, thank everybody for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the documentary. It was a long time coming. I first dreamed about this documentary when I was in prison, when I first learned about documentaries. A lot of people, when they look at my story, they look at it from my past as a drug dealer. And even though I know that part of my life was interesting, you know, a guy that can go from $125 to making some days $3 million, I mean, that is pretty interesting. And he can do that without a high school diploma, without being able to read and write. But I think some of the other things that happened in my life is just as interesting, and some of the lessons that I learned from my life. I was speaking to somebody the other day in Erie, Pennsylvania. I did a lecture there, and this guy was talking about how my life has been such a picture of America. I mean, almost everything that has happened in America, I almost experienced it. Corrupt police, corrupt government, jail, schools failing me or me failing my school, the prison industry, drugs. I mean, in one life, to body that kind of information and that kind of history in one life is like, wow. And then to still be sitting here living and walking and talking is even more extraordinary. A lot of people can't fantasize how I'm free today. You know, how are you walking around the streets doing the things that you've done, been through what you've been through? And what I credit is being a critical thinker. And you might say, well, if you was a critical thinker, why was you selling drugs? How did you get into the drug business? And you was a critical thinker. Well, what I found out that where I came from, in my neighborhood, I had to make some choices. What was you going to do with your life after they told me that I wasn't going to college and play tennis? Because that was my first dream, was to go to college and play tennis. I thought that tennis was going to be my escape from the ghetto. Because I did want to get out the ghetto. You know, I didn't like roaches in my house. I didn't like holes in the floor where rats would come through, broken windows with cardboard, and I wanted out of that. And I wanted out of it almost at any cost. So after I found out the tenants wasn't going to be my out, then I had to pick another one. I had another choice. And in my neighborhood, the choices wasn't pretty. See, my big homies talked about stuff like robbery, home invasion, pimping, selling drugs. And when I looked at those choices, I said, well, you know what? Selling drugs looked like the best out of all of them. Because I couldn't see myself putting a gun in nobody's face, telling them to give me their money. That just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't want to go up in anybody's house where they might come out and I might have to shoot them or they might have to shoot me. But to me, drugs, well, it seemed like the right thing to do. Because all the people that was buying drugs, they looked like they was on top of the world. See, they remind me of this movie I saw. I don't know if you all are old enough to remember this movie, but it was called Superfly. See, when I started selling drugs, the guys that were selling drugs and using drugs remind me of Superfly. They had the Cadillac with the big grill, they had the white walls, they had the women, they had the jewelry, and they looked like they had everything going for them. And when I first started, there was no crack addicts. See, nobody was strung out yet. They wasn't out on the street pushing baskets. Women wasn't selling themselves for it. So it looked at all good to this kid. He was 19 years old when I first got started. So I really was a critical thinker even at that time. But what I found out after I went to prison shocked myself. Once I went to prison and my lawyer gave me 3 pieces of paper. It's called an indictment. And on this indictment, he told me that it would tell me everything that I needed to know about my case, why the government wanted to give me a life sentence, and what I was being charged with. What I found out about myself at that time, for the first time in my life, is that I ever wanted to read. See, I found out that I had never associated reading with being able to assist me in anything that I wanted. I took those 3 pieces of paper back to my cell, and I sit on my bunk and I looked at them and I looked at them, and I knew how desperately I wanted to know what was on those pages. Until I mustered up the courage to tell my cellie to read them to me. And then I told him that I couldn't read. Well, he convinced me that I could learn how to read, and he started to teach me. Within 2 or 3 weeks, I was reading the newspaper. I went from reading the newspaper to doing law. I got so sharp at the law that when I walked in the courtroom, I felt that I was the sharpest person in the courtroom. I felt that I was smarter than my lawyer who had graduated from Harvard University. I felt that I was sharper than my prosecutor who graduated from Yale. I felt that I was sharper than my judge who was the chief judge in San Diego at the time. I knew more about my case than all 3 of those. My judge had gained a new sense of respect for me, but she saw me grow. She remembered when I come in and I could barely read, and they used to have to assist me with my reading to where I could come in and I could read the book without any assistance at all. Well, eventually I found the issue that eventually got myself out of prison. Then I thought about some other things about my life. You know, people used to ask me all the time, they said, Rick, why, when you made so much money, why did you keep selling drugs? What I found out is that there's a thing that's called the law of attraction. I don't know if you ever heard of the law of attraction, but whatever you think about the most is what you bring to yourself. Well, what I had fixed in my mind is that I was going to prison. and that what I had been doing was wrong, and that I should go to prison and pay for what I did. See, when I first started selling drugs, I only wanted $5,000. At one time, I was making $1 million a day, and some days $3 million. Off $1 million, my profit would probably be somewhere around $250,000 and $300,000. So every day, I almost made $250,000 and $300,000 profit. And I didn't spend money on myself. I didn't like to drive the big cars like Super. I started off wanting to be like Superfly, but then when I got into business and I started learning the business, and then I started thinking about security, being a stealth, where nobody would know me, then I didn't want the big cars. I wanted to be under the radar. I didn't want anybody to recognize me. I wanted to walk around and look like everybody else. So I didn't spend money. All my money I just saved. Again, I was being a critical thinker. Not allowing the government to get the type of evidence that they was going to need to really put me away forever. Once I was in prison and I learned about the law of attraction, I started using it in a different way. I started using the law of attraction that got me into prison to get me out of prison. I started seeing myself free. I saw myself winning my case. When I went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, because my judge in the district court denied me and said that I was wrong, that I wasn't right. Went to the Court of Appeals, I won. So I learned that lesson, that you can visualize what you want in life and you can make it come true. So the documentary that you just saw there, I was sitting on my bunk reading one of the books out of the 300 books that I read while I was in prison. Yeah, I said 300 books. Before I left prison, I read over 300 books. And there was 3 books that I read over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because I saw principles in these books that remind me of the same principles that I used when I sold drugs. See, what I found out is that at one time I thought that cocaine made me. But later on I found out that it was principles that made me the cocaine dealer that I became. Because there was other guys that was in prison with me who hadn't sold as much cocaine as I had. And they didn't know why. But I figured out it was the principles. And what I hope that you get out of this, more so than the past, what happened with the government, was the government responsible for bringing the drugs into the country, that there was principles being used that can help you become successful in any walk of life that we choose. There's an article that they did on me in LA Magazine. The guy that wrote this article, he was in the documentary too, Jesse Katz. I don't know if you remember him, but he was the writer for the LA Times. They knew that me and Jesse had a relationship prior to me going to prison. So they wanted Jesse to write the article that went against Gary Webb's story, Dark Alliance, where Gary accused the government of being involved in drugs. Well, Jesse also wrote a pretty substantial article on me in the LA Magazine. About 2 years ago he wrote this article. But before he wrote this article, he wrote another article for Texas Monthly where he says that he was writing my obituary. He came to visit me in prison and he said that he was writing my obituary. And one of the things that he noticed, though, about me when he came to interview me is even though, he said that even though, can I get somebody to read it for me, what he says? Can you do that for me? Please. I think it's right in here. I can't see it with my eyes. Can you see it? Stop here. Can you do it for me? Thank you.
Well, I said it's already a wild story. The wild part hasn't even started yet, Rick said. I was shaving my head, marveling at the audacity, at the fertility of Rick's ambition. He was inmate number 05550-045. He was going to die behind bars. This is America, he insisted. We can dream. That's one thing they didn't take from me. They didn't say, you can't dream no more, Rick. Freeway Rick. Reckless.
Thank you. But I just wanted to give you just a snippet of what he thought in his mind and what I saw in my mind. And what I'm saying is that those same principles are available to each and every one of you today. I had a meeting when I got out of prison with the 4 most powerful guys in Hollywood. And they thought that I came there to sell my story. And they told me that if I didn't sign with one of them, that I would never put my story out. That my documentary would never come out. That my book, it's my autobiography. I'm a best-selling author on Amazon. I publish it myself. I own my own book. That my book wouldn't come out. They said that my movie, the motion picture that I'm working on right now, wouldn't come out. But with these principles, I know that nobody can tell me what I can't and what I can do. Because if I take these same principles and use them the way that I use them in the drug business, I can't fail. No matter how many times I slip and fall, as long as I get up, I still can win. And I'm telling you that the same principles are there to you. The 3 books that I read, I would recommend for everybody who wants to be successful to read those books. As a Woman Think, or As a Man Think, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and The Richest Man in Babylon. Those books gave me the strength when I was 005550045. And all the scholars told me that I was never getting out, that I would be in prison for the rest of my life. And I was talking about doing documentaries. I was talking about speaking at colleges like this right here. See, it's not luck. When I sold drugs, it wasn't luck. I figured it out. I took my time and I analyzed it and I worked it out. And that's the same thing that we have to do with anything that we're going into. We have to sit down and figure it out. We have to put the time in. You know, I told them the other day that when I was selling drugs, I would be out on the block and I would see people go to work. And then when they come back from work, I'd still be standing in that same spot. And then when they get up the next morning, I'd still be in that same spot. Sometimes I would be in that spot for 3 or 4 days. The only time I would leave would go and get me something to eat and I'd come right back. When I started doing law in the law library, the same way. Some mornings I would go to sleep with the book on my chest, and I'd wake up with that book on my chest and start right back reading as soon as I got up. See, smarts is something that you have to earn. I used to think that you just wake up one morning and you're smart. That's what I used to think. But I learned that it takes hard work and determination. That documentary that you just saw, I did 75% of that documentary. They should have had my name in the producer's credit, but somebody felt that they didn't want to put my name there, so they didn't. But I produced that documentary. I produced another show that came on about 2 weeks ago on BET. They didn't give me credit on that either. But I don't mind, though, because I know that with these principles, it's only a matter of time before the things that I want to show, they're going to show. And nobody can hold those things down. And if you take those same principles and you work them, you accomplish the same thing in any field that you want to go into. It's almost like magic. I'm going to end there. With any questions, I'm open. Thank you.
So we'll take questions. I saw a hand already over there.
What are the 3 principles?
Not 3 principles, it's 3 books.
Oh, 3 books.
Well, I can give you one of the main principles is determination. To be determined and not to be discouraged no matter what happens. You know, a lot of times when people are going down the road and then they hit a bump, they stop and they get discouraged. What I've learned is that no matter what happens, you have to keep going if it's something that you believe in and it's something that you really want.
Yes, hi, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering did you ever have a job where you went in and made a paycheck and had a salary or anything?
Speaking at colleges. I got a check from Brown University, Louisville, UCLA.
Before you went into prison. Before
Free River.
Yeah, I know that.
No, I never had a job before. That was one of the things when I was in prison, right, that kind of scared me. I was like, you never had a job, you never filled out a job application. What are you going to do when you get home? And I got lucky and somebody put me up on books. And I was like, well, look, these books are like road maps. They're like another person's history that it may have took them 20 or 30 years to live, and they put in a book, and you can get it in 2 weeks or a week and learn everything that they knew. So that's how I got started on books and got hooked on books, because I found out that I could learn pretty much everything that they knew in a couple days or a couple weeks. So I just started cramming all these different people who really ran this country. You know, people like Sam Walton. I think I read 3 books on him. Phil Knight, who owned Nike, and Bill Gates. I only read books on people who were powerful, and because I want to be a powerful person.
Yeah.
I do want to be powerful. So I read books on people who were powerful. I also read mind books, The Law of Attraction, You Can If You Think You Can, stuff like that there, but no fiction. I didn't read any fiction books, just books that I knew was going to help me financially and mentally.
Do you give back to the community that you were originally from?
I try to. I try to go around and teach what I've learned. I donate those 3 books. You know, I do a lot of juvenile halls, and I do go to men's prison and women's prison when they allow me. It's still hard for me to get inside of prisons because, you know, I shouldn't be trusted. But yes, I'm allowed to go in juvenile halls, and I have bought books with my own money and donated them to the prison. I started I got you now.
Oh, thank you.
I started a nonprofit, and that's the nonprofit's goal, is to donate these certain books to our prison system, because I believe that if a guy was in prison and somebody didn't put him up on the game like they did me, I got lucky that a couple guys turned me on to a couple books that got me started, and then I learned the importance of buying the books, and I started buying the books myself. But there's other people in prison who have burned their bridges, and they don't have people that will send them money or would help them, and they wind up just sitting in prison playing cards or dominoes, and then they get out of prison, and then they 10 years behind or 15, 20 years behind, and they're worse off than they was when they got there. But I believe if we get them certain books so that they can educate themselves, then it'll make society better. All right, do we get her? Then I got you.
Hi. So I wanted to ask you, are you able to expunge your past now? Like, are you able to get that cleared through the court since you have your books, you have your movie deal? Do you want to expunge your record that you have? Or has it been expunged already?
Well, and when you got federal cases, my cases are all federal. The only way you can get them expunged is through the President of the United States. Right. So maybe if Hillary Clinton win, I might. But I don't care if they expunge my record or not, because it don't bother me that I have my convictions. it won't change who I am. Everybody knows me when they see me. You know, the cops, they know me when oh, that's Freeway Rick Ross right there, or the drug dealer. So it won't change just because they expunge my record. So I haven't really put any effort in it. But that's something I might do if Hillary Clinton wins presidency. Then you next.
My question for you, there's value in the journey, and I guess based on where you've come from, that's where you are right now. But my question, if you had to relive your life one more time, would you have done what you've done in the past to bring you?
Knowing what I know today, no, I wouldn't.
And what do you tell young people who are, you know, on the streets and things like that?
Well, what I do is I try to give them the information to make a logical decision. You know, if you sell drugs, you're gonna go to prison. You're gonna get 20 years. When I started selling drugs, nobody told me that I was gonna go to prison for life. My big homie who put me down, he told me the cars, the jewelry, the women, the houses. That's what he explained to me, and he didn't explain to me that I could go to prison for the rest of my life. And I think if young people understand that, then they can make a decision for themselves. Because you can't make up anybody's mind. It's better to give them the information and then let them figure it out for themselves, I think.
Yeah, Rick,
Oh, okay. Go to
Would you really, if you have to live your life one over, would you do it?
Well, I don't think I have to. I know now that cocaine didn't make me. You know, I made the cocaine what I made out of it. It didn't make me who I am, and at one time I thought that it did. I thought that I needed cocaine to survive, that I needed cocaine to get up in the morning, almost like an addict. Selling drugs is almost as addictive as using them. So I felt like that at one time.
yeah, Rick, what are you most proud of in your life right now, of all your accomplishments?
Winning my case. Winning my case is one of them. I have some pretty good accomplishments. I've done some things that nobody else in the world is ever gonna get to do again. I was featured in Esquire magazine's 80th anniversary. I was a feature story, even over President Obama and Bill Clinton. They put my story as a feature story, so I'm pretty proud of that. But I think learning how to read and winning my case was probably, I mean, without those, you know, I would still be in prison right now. So I would say those are pretty high. And then you next.
That's me?
Yeah.
Beautiful. How did, alright, mine's kind of like a two-part question. When you went to prison, did you get institutionalized? And if so, how did you reassimilate back into society with all these apps on your report card?
Well, he asked me, did I get institutionalized? I believe I was institutionalized because jail didn't bother me. Every time you function in a place that's not natural and it doesn't bother you at all, you feel like that this is where you're supposed to be, then I think you're institutionalized. How I prepared to get out, because I knew that I was in that position, I studied to reacquaint myself with society.
So if it wasn't for books, then you just would have been a lost cause?
I probably would have been like everybody else in there. I probably would have been gambling, selling drugs. Because, listen to this here. When you go to prison, drug selling don't stop. My first day in the maximum security penitentiary, when you go to the maximum security penitentiary, they put you in what they call classification. Classification is the hole. And in the hole, you're locked down 23 hours a day. You're out 1 hour for rec and sunshine, and then they lock you down. Well, my first day there, a guy OD'd in the hole.
Wow.
So that told me that they can't stop drugs in the maximum security penitentiary, so they can't stop it. Is that it?
Yeah.
How much of an impediment have you had out here doing your thing? And how much of a backlash have you gotten from society? Like, they ready to spit you back out, right? So,
Well, you know, really who support me right now and who got my book a bestseller is street cats. You know, cats that stand out on the street, they relate to me really well. They got my book on the bestsellers list. They read my book. A lot of people don't. They don't trust me. They don't believe me. They don't think that I should be allowed to talk to people. But I don't care, because what I try to explain to them and anybody else is that I put myself right here. Nobody else put me here. I knew that I was going to be doing this even when I was in prison. I think it was somebody, oh yeah. Okay.
What about your spirit, man? What type of books did you read while in prison and do you read now to develop them?
Spirit?
Your spirit.
I read the Bible.
Do you believe it?
Some of it. I read the Quran. What else did I read? I went to More Science. I read their books, some of their books. The Nation of Islam. I mean, I was seeking knowledge. I was looking for information that I felt that I should have been seeking all my life. You did.
Given your experience, how would you reform the prisons to make?
How would I reform the prisons?
Yes.
Oh, I would make a prison just like this college. I would make it where if a person went in and they accomplished certain goals, then they would be able to receive certain benefits. It's according to what type of crime you committed. I don't believe that drug dealers should be treated like murderers. I just don't. I mean, and I might be biased because I'm one of them, you know. But I believe a drug deal is a crime that's committed between two consensual adults. Both of them agree to do this crime. It's what they call a victimless crime. When you read about drug deals in the law books, the law says that it's a victimless crime. That the person who's supposed to be the victim is not going to come in court and say, "Oh, Your Honor, this guy sold me some drugs and I got high off of it. And I gave him all my money and I loved it." You know, that's not the kind of crime that somebody who rapes somebody, or somebody who takes a gun and sticks in your face and takes your car, or take your jewelry, or take your wallet. Those are two different crimes. Drug dealing is an economical crime. It's a crime that somebody who is trying to make some money, not necessarily trying to hurt anybody, and pick drugs to do it. Was your name?
Yes.
Okay.
Wouldn't it change from economical though once, like, say you witness the person in front of you, or you have somebody that died right then
I mean,
and there.
say that again?
Doesn't it change from economical, that wasn't my question though, but doesn't it change from economical, like if you know so many people died, they OD or whatever, directly from you, like say you had a test or you came back with like boom and then it was the last test.
With cocaine, I never saw anybody die from hitting the pipe. I haven't. Huh? I never saw anybody OD. I probably would look at it different if I saw somebody OD, but I've never saw anybody. I mean, I saw people smoke $5,000 of cocaine in one day, and smoke until all their money was gone. But I never saw anybody actually die from doing it.
And my question was, you say you go give the folks, people, the men in jail. Do you go to the women's prison too? Because it's not just men out here selling drugs.
When I can, when they let me. It's not a situation where, even with you probably don't even have a conviction, but you can't just walk down to the prison, knock on the door and say, "Oh, I want to come in and help you." They won't let you in. Oh, okay. Well, you know how hard it is to get in there. Yeah, so that's the problem.
So what are your thoughts on ending the so-called war on drugs? Do you think that drugs should be legalized in America as it is in other countries?
Well, we know from prohibition with alcohol that they couldn't win that. We know that they can't keep drugs out of their maximum security penitentiaries. We know that drugs not only corrupt the young black kids on the street, but it corrupts the good cops who has all the decorations, who has a house in the suburbs. If he can be corrupted, how easy is it for a kid who doesn't have food in the refrigerator to be corrupted?
That's what I'm talking
I got you next.
How did you get the drive? Like after you had like millions of dollars and stuff, you come back onto the streets. How did you actually get the drive to actually go up and create a business and stuff of that nature? Because you can see that you have the entrepreneurial spirit. So like, how can one actually have that type of drive after their kingdom basically got demolished?
Well, what you have to understand is from reading books, I found out that I'm supposed to be lazy by nature. I'm supposed to not want to work. That I'm supposed to want to put my heels up and let somebody serve me. But in order for me to be successful and the way that I want to be successful, I have to make the sacrifices. I have to make myself get up in the morning when I don't want to get up. Just like when I was in the joint, I used to lift weights. And it would be morning, it would be cold, sometimes it'd be 20 degrees. But I had made a commitment that I was going to get on the pull-up bar at least 3 days a week. I was going to do my sit-ups, I was going to do my push-ups, and I was going to hit the weights. And those are the things that I had to do. So in business, I make a commitment that I have to get up and I have to do certain things every single day. Like I have to call 10 people when I get up in the morning, just to say, how you doing?
Just a comment, much of what you say reminds me of some aspect of Malcolm X, and that he used the prison experience in order to turn his life around. And I guess the question is, could you talk about what insights you may have experienced that sort of like what do you call like a Damascus Road experience or whatever? What was it that got to you to make you say, I'm going the wrong way, I have to do something different, and I believe I could do it? Or was there any one thing, or how did that happen?
It was. As for Malcolm X, you know, his book was the first book I ever read from front to back. His first book. And in his book, I saw myself, and I felt that I could be bigger than Malcolm. So that's one of the things that motivate me right now. One of the things that helped me is that I started to see myself as a hypocrite. After I started to learn about drugs, when I first started selling drugs, I used to give cocaine to my girlfriend all the time. Yeah, go get high, leave me alone. But then after I started to get hip to it, I started to say, hey, you're doing too much cocaine. Stop doing so much cocaine. And then it got to being where, stop doing cocaine altogether. Then I started to go and tell my friends, because she wouldn't get it from me, she would sneak around and go and get it from my friends. Then I started to tell them, hey, don't sell her cocaine. And I started to see myself being a hypocrite, that I was selling cocaine to everybody and that I didn't want mine. Kind of like I said in the documentary, I didn't want my brother getting high, I didn't want my mama getting high, and I felt that if I didn't want their people getting high, then I shouldn't be selling it to nobody else. And that's how I came.
Yes. My question is, you know, since you sold, right, massive amounts of drugs, right, and you know, and you went to the penitentiary, and you know, and you were able to get out, right, you know, through the law, beating the law, right, and going back to your community, right, creating this, right, what you have, right, when you go back to your community and you ride through that community, how does that affect your psyche?
Well, to see what cocaine has done to the community is devastating. You know, we had a lot of property in Los Angeles that is no longer there. It's really kind of like what we thought we were accomplishing was totally the opposite. We thought that we were building wealth for ourselves and for our community, and in the long run, it turned out to be totally the opposite. We wound up losing the property, going to prison. I think I probably have about 10 of my friends, and maybe 5 of them that I gave cocaine for the first time, personally gave it to them, taught them how to sell it, and they went on and they got life sentences for it. So I feel responsible for them being in prison right now, because they knew nothing about cocaine. They didn't have a clue about cocaine, and I taught them. But you can't totally blame me either. No. Because what you have to do is say, okay, well, who taught Rick how to sell cocaine? So then you have to go to my big homie who showed me how to do it, and then blame him. But then you got to go to who taught him how to do it. So it's like a long list of who's responsible, and I think that it's better to start looking for a solution than to try to find out who started it. Was somebody over here?
Yeah, I actually have a question. Does your story define you, or do you define your story?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Here. Nobody never asked me that before. I don't know. I mean, we're the same. You can't. I don't think you can separate us. Me from the story.
So being incarcerated for the time that you were, that's a long time. I mean, I'm only 24. So, I mean, that would be most of my life. Do you feel like now you appreciate things more, like being able to walk out of this college, whenever you were able to walk out, when I saw in your documentary, whenever you walked out of that juvenile prison, like when you were walking in, you were kind of nervous. How did it feel just like walking out after being back in that predicament? Do you feel like you appreciate things more, maybe certain foods, anything that you couldn't have?
Absolutely. Just to be able to turn the lights on when you get ready. When you're in prison, you know, you can't turn your lights on. They turn the lights on and off for you. They tell you when you can take a shower, when you can go to the store, what time you can eat, what you're going to eat. So absolutely, I appreciate, but I always appreciate it. You know, even when I sold drugs, when I was rich, I never didn't appreciate the things that I had because I remember when I didn't have, and I tried to respect it, and that's kind of what enabled me to make the kind of money that I made.
Do you ever feel like you're ever targeted still by the government? You ever feel like from your past some of the tentacles still reaching back at you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm still targeted by it. I mean, not everybody, because some people from the government love me.
How about on the criminal side?
The streets love me. I mean, the streets just flat out, they love me. I mean, they love my book. I mean, they support me. You know, without the guys from the street who've been buying my stuff, and I wouldn't be a best-selling author right now. So I'm gonna get you next. I'm gonna get somebody who hasn't said it.
Yeah. Every great empire, you know, because you have your generals in every empire, and you have your confidants and you have your lieutenants in every empire that you built. And in your story, I know the streets do love you on so many levels. But throughout your story, I never hear about the confidants and lieutenants who, like, what their story, were they able to recover through all the struggles, through that period that you were locked down? Are they able to do the same thing like you're doing now, even?
They're not taking that initiative, you know.
Yeah.
Now Coach Ward did. You know, he worked with Pete Curl down at SC, and he started he runs the biggest gang intervention program in the country. So he has, but the majority of them didn't, because sometimes people don't want to reinvent themselves. You know, they get stuck. Like the book said, "Who moved my cheese?" And they sit there and they wait on the cheese to come back, and you know the cheese is gone, not coming back. Some people get stuck, and some of them got stuck, and
you know how you said selling drugs is addictive? Well, I completely agree with that. So, do you think it's the only way when you're in the game for so long to stop selling is to get incarcerated or be like forced out the game, or do you think it's possible to you to stop once you reach what you wanted? Like you say, when you first started, you wanted 5,000, but then you reached 1 million. You think it's possible to stop, or is it so addicting that the only way to stop to get out the game is to be forced out?
You can stop on your own. You have to find replacements though, you know, because you get used to that routine, and you want to have something to do. You like going and moving and shaking and dealing with people. So you have to replace that with something else. But yeah, I think you can quit without selling drugs. I'm gonna get him first. He was next.
When you wake up in the morning, do you feel you're still trying to repay a debt to society every day, or is it every day is a new day?
I don't know if I'm necessarily trying to pay a debt to society, because I don't believe I owe society. I look at selling drugs like this here. I don't think that you can blame the drug dealer any more than you can blame the drug user. Because drug users, if you had a magic wand today, and you could wipe all the drug dealers off the planet, like boom, they're all gone. but you didn't do nothing about the users. Well, as soon as you do that, they're going to start creating a new dealer. Because they're going to be running around with money in their hand talking about who got it, where's it at? And when they do that, somebody's going to fill those, they're going to fill those orders. Even if it's one of the users, will start to deal. Users taught me how to work a triple beam. They taught me what 1/10 of a gram was, what an ounce was, what an 8-track was, what a kilo was, what a pound was. I didn't know none of that stuff because I didn't do well in science in school. But drug users had the patience and determination to make sure that they had them a dealer that they could trust and would have their drugs when they wanted it.
You have a great sense of intuition, which is probably part of your being streetwise, and that's how you stay alive most of the time. You also have great confidence, and determination is one of your mantras. What that aspect and the fact that you do have these talents, would you think that education would be a great vehicle for young men and women to be able to focus on that same kind of principles?
I think so. It just may need to be taught a different way for different people. You know, when you deal with somebody from the ghetto, you may not be able to teach them the same way like my lawyer. You know, my lawyer, he grew up in a house where his mother was a lawyer and his daddy was a lawyer. So for him, law came easy. He already knew how to talk the language, but for somebody like me, I had to learn how to talk this language. You know, when you hear me speak now, I didn't speak this well always. I wasn't this, you know, this read, and my vocabulary wasn't as strong. But over time, after I started to study, then it picked up. I'm trying to get everybody that ain't had a chance to say something.
So drugs aside, you had a business, right? And so it's a two-part question. What were your competitors not doing that you did to make your business what it was, right? And what was your
easy.
And what was your biggest challenge as a business owner?
My competitors, what I found out, the guys who were basically at that time who were the dealers, and they were very small. You know, most of them was buying maybe $1,000 worth of drugs, and they thought that that's what you should do. Only buy $1,000 worth of drugs, spend the money, and then go get another $1,000 worth of drugs. Well, what I figured out is that you wanted to get a lot of drugs, and then the $1,000 would be the crumbs. Say for instance, I had two friends, right? I'm gonna tell you this quick story since you brought that up. I had two friends that when I first started selling drugs, one was selling PCP and one was selling marijuana. They were like the rich guys in the neighborhood. I estimated they probably had close to 20 grand a piece I had like $2,000 when they had 20 grand. Well, I went to them because I wanted them to come in with me so I could buy more cocaine, get a better price. So I talked to them and they came in. They both gave me $2,000 a piece. Well, they started rolling with me. When I got up to $16,000, I don't know how much money they had, but one went and bought a brand new Cadillac like Superfly with the big grill, the gangster white walls, the rims, everything, the bumper kit, laid. He probably paid about 18 to 20 grand for it. The other one went and bought a brand new van. I went and bought a pound of cocaine. That's what I bought, a pound of cocaine. So when I went and bought the pound of cocaine, my supplier gave me a $400 discount per ounce. I didn't tell my two partners that he had gave me the $400 discount. So when they would come and buy their ounce every day, I made $400 every day off of each one of them. That was $800 a day that I made off of them.
Jeez.
But what happened is they started to get bigger just like I started to get bigger. I started to do 20 ounces a day. They started to do 20 ounces a day too. So now that 400 became 4,000 off of each one of them. $8,000 profit a day just because I went up and spent my money and brought the cocaine back to the neighborhood, and they didn't. I started to make like 4,000, and then, you know, in the end, you know, one of them was spent like $1 million a week. So you already know how much money I was making off of that. But I think that changed the landscape of how I began to make my money, if I made any sense.
And what was your biggest business challenge?
My biggest business challenge is to hide my money. I had a problem with hiding the money, you know, and spending it, because you have so much money that you don't know what to do with it. It's hard to hide it. You know, you put it in houses and the police find it, somebody break in, so the money became a problem.
I'd like to go back to this victimless crime ideology. We talk about there's no victim, two consenting adults. Well, you got one that's an addict. I'm not sure he's really consenting to his addiction and the pain he's feeling, so he doesn't want to go through withdrawals. The other victim, isn't that the community itself who suffers from some of the actions of selling drugs in the community? There is violence sometimes between competing drug dealers. So there is sometimes dangers to the people within the community. And then there's the victims of the African Americans themselves, having you perpetuate the stereotypes that everybody thinks African Americans in the inner city fall into. So I'm not sure I buy this victimless ideology that you're saying there is in drug dealing.
Well, I didn't say that. That's what the law says. The law says that it's a victimless crime. I'm not the one who wrote the law. And you could be right that the one who's using the drug, he could be considered a victim too, but the one who's selling it could also be considered a victim. How? Because the guy who's coming to him with money, he's putting money in his face saying, give me drugs. That's tempting. That's not tempting for somebody to come and put money in your face and say, will you go over here and get this from him and bring it to me and I'm going to pay you for it.
So you're saying those addictions are equivalent?
I think that the seller is probably worse off than the user. Because with the user, people will tell a user that you shouldn't use, but nobody will tell a dealer that he shouldn't deal. He's praised in society.
Your mother, I didn't see the whole film, but if you had all that money, how did they foreclose on her house? You, at that time, were you making the money?
No, this is since I've been out.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the whole film. So
Yeah, this is since I've been out. She got caught up in the loan thing, but that wasn't, no, she never would have lost her house when I was out.
Okay, so all your money's gone now?
Yes.
From dealing drugs?
Yes, it is.
Or well hidden?
That's right.
I like that one. I like it.
That's positive.
Just to piggyback on Elmer's question on that. I'm from the West Coast. I remember when drugs hit. I'm from the Bay Area. I remember when drugs hit, and we can point the finger, but it's and he doesn't necessarily have to say it. The bottom line is, in the African American community, we don't have planes, so we don't fly the dope in here. We don't. If you really want to break it down and get to it, it came through customs. We didn't fly it in. It came in a way where it wouldn't have to go through customs. Naturally, where people are oppressed, we're going to look for a way out, whether it be right or wrong. But nobody really wants to deal with the real big pink elephant in the suit in the room. So the real perpetuator is not the guy with his pants sagging. He's got a suit on. And you can find a lot of them in D.C. There it is.
We're going to do 2 more questions and then we're going to close.
Jeez.
We're going to do you and then you still ask the question? All right. We're going to do you and then we're going to do that.
I just want to, for 1 second, we will continue some more questions as long as Rick is up to it and everybody's engaged and so forth. So we can continue for about another 15 minutes or so, depending on the energy and so forth and how you're feeling. All right?
Okay.
How y'all feeling?
I was just piggybacking on what Professor Deere said. Yeah, I don't see how you're perpetuating this particular stereotype that is already plain and simple evidence. It's already been there for ever since we came over there. Ever since they brought us over there, we were already here, or whatever else, how all that came about. That's already been on the table. So I don't. And the situation that we've already been set up have already been, you know what I'm saying, indoctrinated and institutionalized since way, 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 way back. All you're seeing, or you get to see what they show you. And that's the way I feel about that, you know, and everything you're doing right now is really a blessing to people who ain't really getting that message direct, front and center.
Thank you. Sort of to talk about what she was talking about with appreciation, do you find now that with picking up your education and with possibly age being a factor as well, do you find yourself getting taken back with sort of the beauty that you find? Because you've been to these places that are very lack of beauty, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess the answer to that is just that I'm just overwhelmed to be free and alive. You know, just like that guy said that he was writing my obituary, it was days that I felt dead.
Yeah.
You know, we would walk the track and we would talk to each other as if we were dead. We would call ourselves the walking dead. So I'm just overwhelmed right now. I mean, there's nothing that somebody could do to me other than killing me that would hurt me. I mean, you know, I've been beat in the head with flashlights. I've been bit by dogs while I was handcuffed. I've had drugs planted on me, and police stand on the witness stand and lie and say, oh, he had drugs that day, and he tried to shoot us, and, you know, I've been through all that. So right now I'm just overwhelmed at life, you know, and I'm enjoying life, and whatever you throw at me, I'm going to take it and catch it. I got you. Thank you. And move on.
How did you cope with coming home from jail, not having nothing, after having everything that you did have?
Well, I read in The Richest Man in Babylon that it was a guy who went to prison, and he went to prison. He was totally innocent. He should have never been in prison. But he went to prison, he studied, he got himself out, and he became the richest man in the whole country, even more powerful than the king of his country. So that gave me strength and told me that if he could do it, I can do the same thing.
All right, how did you feel the day you came out knowing you didn't have nothing? Like you walked out of jail and you're like...
But I did. I had everything. I had my background. I had a mind that had made $3 million a day. That it took $125 and moved it to $3 million a day. A mind that was totally illiterate, but went in the courtroom and outwitted some of the smartest people in the country. So I had that mind, and I recognized that I had it, and I knew that all I had to do was put it to work. And if I put it to work, I found out something else about me, and also about a lot of young drug dealers, is that we have a sense for tolerance. See, when I sold drugs, I knew that I could go to prison. But I also had in my mind, now I didn't know I was going to be looking at a life sentence. I thought 10 years, 15 years was going to be what I'd be looking at. And then I would get out and have all my money. But I was prepared to go to prison. Like he said, it's occupational hazard. You know, you might have to shoot somebody for trying to take your drug, and somebody might shoot you. You know, every morning that you wake up as a drug dealer, you have to think about those things. You need to get hurt. I'm still trying to get some people who haven't said anything.
Thank you. Earlier you said that you don't wake up thinking that you need to, or that you owe society. Does that mean you've met your goal with helping youth, or do you have an ultimate goal with helping youth reach educational and economical opportunities?
No, I haven't met my goal, no. But I don't think I owe them that. I don't think I owe society that. I do it because I enjoy doing it, not because I'm paying society back. I think I do it because I enjoy seeing young people flourish and do well. Pretty much just like I did in the drug business. Really in the drug business, all I did was took a young guy who wasn't doing anything with his life and taught him how to sell drugs. And then when he became a millionaire, he gave me the credit. That's basically what I did, and that's kind of what I try to do now. Let me get her. She hasn't said anything, and then I'm gonna get you. Right, cool. You've been trying to go.
So you stated that it's a law of attraction. So if you were put in a situation where it was like extremely bad situation, would you do it again?
You said that it was a law of attraction.
Meaning like an addiction. Someone said it was like an addiction. So if you were put in a bad situation where you had nothing, would it come to mind to do it again? Would it come pass by your mind?
But you can't put me in a situation in America like that. If that situation doesn't exist in America for me anymore because of who I am right now. But there's people who don't have my experience and my knowledge that they don't see the world the way I do. I can see, I see the world differently now. Like you say, the law of attraction is when I went and saw the movie Superfly. So when I went and saw the movie Superfly, I saw a black man that I wanted to be like. And I believe that brought cocaine to me. You understand? Go ahead. Now I'm get you
like,
in.
after all you've been through with all the government and all that stuff, like how have you ever got into the pro-black sectors and stuff of that nature?
Say that again?
Like pro-black, but your perspectives and stuff, like not trusting government or anything. Because
I don't trust some of the government.
No, I'm saying, but like you don't have like a deep animosity. Like you don't, like yeah, your book says it all, but you don't have that animosity. Like you don't express.
But everybody in the government ain't corrupt. There's some good people in the government, and there's some corrupt ones in the government.
I had a two-parter. First was a comment, then the question. The comment was.
We ain't asking no more
The comment was simple.
No, I'm messing with you. I'm messing.
I just want to. I got arrested about a year and a half ago in Gardena. I personally took your story. Like when I got arrested, I used that as some inspiration to fight my case, and I actually got off on all my charges on the 4th. So.
Gardena, California?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you from the hood?
I was out there. I'm from over here in Norwich, but I was out there living because the West Coast is the best coast, kind of. But.
Well, you know, people tell me all the time. There's people that came up to me and told me that they got the inspiration from me to graduate from college.
I'm here right now because I beat that case and I decided, well, I got this new lease on life. I'm going to go to college now, so here I am sitting asking you this question. But the question was, do you think the war on drugs is being perpetuated the way it is because the government can make so much money off of it even to this day?
Absolutely. A lot of people benefit from the war on drugs. I mean, we're the biggest prison guards in the world. India has 1 billion people. There's more black men, twice as many black men in prison in the U.S. than there is in the whole country in India. It's 300,000 inmates in India. They have 1 billion people. We have 600 and some thousand non-violent, drug-offended black men in prison here in the U.S.
Hi, how are you?
I'm gonna get you next. I'm good. How you?
I'm well, thank you. I know that you're a motivational speaker now, and you know, you're trying to. Well, that's people, in the right direction, not doing whatever, going down the path that you want to go. Do you miss that lifestyle? Do you miss the money? Do you just miss being where you were? Do you miss all of it?
I miss the money. You know, I've had conviction notices put on my door like 3 times since I've been out of prison, and I never had that happen before this. So I do miss being able to help people. You know, when your auntie calls you, hey, they just took my car,
right,
and you can go over and get her car out. So I do miss that part of it. But I just work and strive to get back to that level, but in a different way, with a different product.
And have you been a straight shooter since? Have you backsliding? I don't know what I'm saying. Have you backsliding, or have you been on the right path, straight
I haven't sold cocaine since '87.
Well, your reputation preceded you before your incarceration. When you were in prison, was that a hindrance or benefit for you amongst the inmates? Was it jealousy? Were you afraid for your safety?
Well, a few inmates didn't like it. I was fortunate to grow up in South Central LA, in what they call the Hoover Street Crips, in my neighborhood. At that time, it was the biggest gang in LA. They liked somebody from their hood that's been successful, so they adopted me, even though I never considered myself a Crip. They adopted me as a Crip. They watched over me, and they wouldn't let anybody bother me. And the Bloods also adopted me. And with my personality and whatnot, I was allowed to do things in prison around the inmates that some blacks couldn't do. I could just about sit at any table in the kitchen. I could sit with certain guys at their table, and they might not let another black guy sit there. So I did receive benefits that a lot of guys didn't receive. But in the guards, they look at me a little different. so it was both ways.
Right here, Rick.
I forgot you, man.
Yeah,
You
I'm
next.
good, I'm good. I just want to know if you could run the name of those books that you
You trying to get some money. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. As a Man Think by James Allen. And The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. Is that it? We done? Oh, my man.
How did you stay so humble when you had the money? But I wouldn't want to stun on people.
Hey, you know what I found out? People like you when you're humble.
Right.
See, you can fool them when you're humble. You can have ego, right? Because the people who get to know me, they say, man, your ego's so big. But you don't let nobody see it. So I got an ego, but I try to, keep it in check. Like, don't you get loose. Don't act crazy. So, you got to always humble yourself down. And because when you're humble, people don't mind helping you. And in my drug dealing, a lot of people helped me get to where I was. I mean, the police used to get mad because all my neighbors hit me. Yeah, they would hide me. Hey, the police coming, get over here. So, when you're humble, though, they'll do that. But if you're arrogant and you're disrespectful, then,
They'll be the first ones to rat you out.
Exactly. So, even though I was a drug dealer, that I've been humble definitely assisted me in. You ain't said nothing. Come on.
I haven't. Well, all right. We live in like a different time, I guess, when it comes to like the way that drugs are sold and marketed to people. I mean, like you can go online. There's something called Silk Road, and like there's a site following it where people can buy huge amounts of drugs online without even having.
They just gave a guy a life sentence for that.
Yeah, but my point is, and the white collar individuals like are using drugs as a means of gaining economical advantage, and it's something that people not use an example, but I mean like just the fact that our government was able to like use it to fund things that they didn't necessarily have the money for. Is it something that you see as inevitable and something that should kind of be, kept in check through education but not focused on, or is it something that we should really be striving to completely eradicate in our culture?
Well, I don't think we can eradicate it.
I agree.
I think that the best part would be education. If we started really educating our kids as young as we can, as young as people feel comfortable and letting them know about drugs, showing them what happens when you start using drugs. But right now, the number one drugs are prescription drugs. Heroin is on the rise, and I don't know if people know why, but doctors have been writing prescriptions for what was that? Oxycodone. Percocet. Yeah. And all those drugs are made out of synthetic heroin. And what happens is that those pills cost more than heroin, So what happens is once they get hooked on those pills and they can't afford those pills, then they turn to the streets and go get heroin. And that's why heroin is on the rise right now. But I believe, like you said, that we definitely have to start putting more money into education. I mean, we've been putting billions and billions in incarceration and in law enforcement, and you know, look where we at right now. 2.3 million people in prison and rising.
I just want to commend you for turning your life around from where you came from.
Thank you.
This is a small. Federal penitentiary, federal time is no joke. My brother did 14 years for the same thing, and coming from a little small town around here, born and raised here, and then going to federal penitentiary out west and seeing what they were going through versus when y'all know around here, Montville, Corrigan, or Niantic is nothing. Walking into a federal penitentiary as a visitor, just visiting somebody, is a total eye experience. So I commend you.
We're gonna take that last question. I have one, and then we're gonna save the last time for any photos and so forth. And he has some books signed.
Yeah, I got like 25 books, so if anyway, I want to get one of my books, I'll sign with no address.
Throughout your whole life, like, at what point in your life turned way worse? And if there was anything that you could change, that you could have done differently, what would it be?
What part did it turn for the worse? I don't know. I done had some experiences. My life sentence, I guess, was a pretty bad day. You know, walking out of the courtroom, my mom break down in the courtroom after they give me the life sentence, and she don't know if they ever see me, if she'll ever see me as a free man again. But you know, I've been shot at numerous times.
What was your biggest mistake in life that you felt like if you had not done that, made that mistake, your life could have changed?
My biggest mistake? Probably not learning how to read at a young age, because not learning how to read and not knowing that there was so much information inside of books that could have taught me things that I didn't understand about life was totally life-changing. I mean, when I was in prison, I've been places inside my prison cell that I've never thought about going to in real life.
This last, we have to wrap up because we want some time for them to meet and greet you and so forth. So this last question posed to you along the lines of the academic themes of myths and legends. In your book, you talk about Gary Webb, and you talk about his audacity, his courageousness to bust this story wide open of the CIA scandal, Iran-Contra, and so forth. And could you just briefly talk about what he means to you and the legend of Gary Webb? And what happened to him as well?
Well, to me, Gary was a guy that wanted justice for everybody. He saw a system that he didn't feel was getting its just due from both sides. Gary thought that the guys on the street were being punished at a level that was unfair and unconstitutional, and the guys on the top, say for instance, my guy that I always get my drugs from, he also was the guy that set me up and testified against me. This guy got caught with 10,000 keys. This is what they caught him with, not what they didn't catch him with that I sold that they never heard about. But he got caught with 10,000 keys. This guy got 28 months in prison.
And a green card.
And a green card. So when Gary was hearing stories like these, he was like, well, how can they get his kid who's 20? No. My first cellie was 18 years old. Was 18 years old. He sold the drugs at 17. He turned 18 2 weeks later. They arrested him 2 weeks later, and they gave his kid 20 years because he sold $1,000 worth of rock cocaine.
It's not even as much as the pure form of cocaine.
And you're right, it's not, because it got baking soda in it. So when Gary heard this and Gary started investigating it, he said it made him sick. He didn't like it, and he wanted it to change. Also, I don't know if you know too, Gary is the guy who started the forfeiture. He stopped the forfeiture thing that was going on in this country. I don't know if you heard about it, but it was a time that you could be riding down the street and you might have had a joint in the car, and you put the joint in the ashtray and the police pull you over and he said, "Oh, you got a joint. You know what? We're going to take you to jail and we're going to take your car." And then you go to court and the judge said, "How much did they have?" And they said, "Oh, we had a tenth of a gram of marijuana in the car." The judge said, "I'm throwing that out of here." They still kept your car.
Jeez.
When Gary said that no, they shouldn't take the car unless you're found guilty. And he fought that, and he wrote an article about it, and he made them change it to where they couldn't forfeit your property unless you was found guilty, and they had to go through a procedures. But before that, they used to just take your car, you didn't get a trial, you didn't get a hearing, you didn't get nothing, your property was just gone. So that's the kind of guy Gary Webb was. He went against the normal, with everybody else, all the other reporters was writing about it. And then you hear what he said now, he's like, how can the CIA admit that they were protecting drug dealers and nobody knows about it? That's because the other reporters, they're not going to report. They're going to report a one-sided story to where it looks good for the cops, because anytime you go against the cops, you're being soft on crime and you're being soft on criminals. And that's the kind of guy Gary was.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to